Welcome back to the Deep Dive. I'm your host, and I'll be guiding our conversation today. Settle in, get comfortable. We've got a really profound topic on the table.
And I am thrilled to be here as your resident expert to unpack it all. We have some incredible material to go through today.
We really do. I want to start by setting a scene that, well, I think is going to feel uncomfortably familiar for you listening.
I have a feeling I know exactly what kind of scene you mean.
Yeah, so picture yourself in one of those high-stakes meeting rooms. You know the ones. The glass walls, the view of the city, the heavy leather chairs.
Right, the whole corporate aesthetic.
Exactly. You're sitting there, your calendar is just a solid block of color from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m., and you are vibrating with intensity.
You're answering emails in seconds.
Yes, nodding at the exact right times. You are, by every modern corporate definition, just crushing it.
It is the absolute image of the ideal modern worker. You know, high speed, high output, high visibility.
But then, and here is the catch, let's fast forward to 7 p.m. The office is quiet. You are packing up your bag. And you have this sinking, really heavy realization in your gut.
That feeling of, I didn't actually move the needle on anything today.
Yes.
Yeah.
That exact thought. You are wading through mud for 10 hours, expending massive amounts of calories, but geographically, you haven't moved an inch.
That is the treadmill effect. It's high exertion with zero displacement. And usually when we feel that distinctive heaviness, you know, that specific kind of exhaustion, we immediately turn inward.
We blame ourselves.
We do. We think, I need more discipline, or I need a better productivity app, or maybe I'm just not cut out for this level of leadership.
It's treated as a personal failure. Like if I just drank more green juice or woke up at 4 a.m. to meditate, the mud would somehow disappear.
Right. But the research we're unpacking today suggests that this self-blame is completely misplaced. I want to be a guide here, not a fixer, because you don't need fixing.
So what is the actual problem if it's not our work ethic?
The problem is the architecture of the environment you're in. And honestly, the psychological stance you are taking toward that environment. It is about the physics of how we work, not just the raw effort.
Okay, so we're looking at two really dense, deeply insightful sources today that tackle this head on.
They are fantastic reads.
Yeah, the first one is titled Clarity Over Complexity, Fueling Execution Momentum. And the second is Coherence and the Kinetic Power of Alignment.
And reading these side by side is eye-opening.
It really was. It felt less like reading management theory and more like looking at a blueprint for why I am tired all the time.
That is a completely valid reaction, because these sources are essentially asking a core question. Why is there so much friction in our daily work?
Right, and they tackle it from two different angles. Yeah. The first source looks at the friction outside of us, the systems, the bureaucracy, the endless meetings that really should have been emails.
And the second source looks at the friction inside of us, our mindset, our fears, and our identity.
So our mission for this deep dive is to see how those two things crash into each other. We aren't here to give you, like, a life hack to get to inbox zero.
No, absolutely not. We want to look at the difference between being busy, which is a trap, and actually moving forward. We want to figure out why some teams seem to just fly while others are stuck in that mud.
And just a quick heads up for you listening, we are going to get into a concept later called performing versus aligning.
Yes, we are. And I have to say, it might be a little triggering for anyone who has built a career on looking busy.
Oh, I definitely felt called out.
It creates a distinction that is very uncomfortable if you look at it too closely, but it's necessary for true autonomy.
Let's start with the external stuff first, though. The first source, Clarity Over Complexity, drops a pretty heavy truth right out of the gate.
It does. It suggests that the systems we build, the ones we think are helping us manage the work, are often the very things killing our execution.
The tiers of approval, the steering committees.
Exactly. It identifies complexity not just as a minor annoyance or a necessary evil of scaling a business, but as a structural barrier.
And the core argument there is fascinating.
Right. It argues that when a system becomes complex, humans default to a specific, almost biological behavior. They overthink and under-execute.
I really want to dig into that mechanism. Overthink and under-execute. Why does having a complex system make me think too much? Is it just confusion?
It is cognitive load. Think about it. If you have to navigate a 10-step approval process just to get a basic project started.
Or if you have to check in with 3 different departments to make sure you aren't stepping on any toes.
Yes. Your brain is spending 80% of its energy just figuring out the path and only 20% on the actual destination.
So you're spending your mental capital on the bureaucracy, not the problem you were actually hired to solve.
Precisely. Complexity breeds hesitation. In a complex environment, you stop acting on your instinct or your expertise because you are terrified of tripping a wire.
You don't want to accidentally offend the wrong stakeholder.
Or bypass a protocol you didn't even know existed. So what do? You pause. You hesitate. You overthink.
And that hesitation crystallizes into what the text calls a very specific workplace addiction. It says cultures become addicted to meetings instead of momentum.
That word addicted is very intentional there.
It was stuck out to me too. Because usually we complain about meetings. We say, oh, great, another meeting. But addiction implies we are getting something out of it, like we are dependent on them.
We are. And what are we getting? We are getting safety. The source suggests that in complex, unclear environments, meetings become a safety blanket.
How so?
Well, if we are all sitting in a room brainstorming or socializing the idea, we feel like we are working. It validates our existence without requiring us to take the risk of actually doing something that could fail.
It's like a dilution of responsibility. If we are all in the room agreeing, then if the project tanks, it's nobody's fault specifically.
Exactly. It is performative busyness. If I'm in a meeting, I can't be fired because look how involved I am. The source describes this as endless brainstorming without follow-through. It gives you a dopamine hit of collaboration, that feeling of, wow, we are really getting somewhere today.
But without the actual risk of execution.
Yes. But surely some complexity is necessary, right? I mean, we can't just run large organizations on vibes alone. We need rules. We need structure.
Of course. And the source isn't arguing for complete anarchy. It makes a really important distinction between complexity and process.
Right. Complexity is opaque, it's heavy, and it creates friction.
Whereas process should be clear, light, and actually create flow. The source says explicitly, simplify the structure.
It argues that while complexity kills momentum, clarity fuels it.
So what is a functional difference between a structure that kills momentum and one that fuels it?
Intent. Ask yourself, is the structure there to control the worker or to clear the path for the worker?
That's a great framing. Could you give me an example of that?
Okay, think of a guardrail on a mountain highway versus a roadblock.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
A guardrail provides structure. It tells you exactly where the edge is so you can drive faster with confidence. It creates a boundary of safety that actually allows for speed.
And a roadblock.
A roadblock stops you completely. It forces you to get out of the car, show your papers, explain where you were going, and wait for permission. Most corporate complexity functions as a roadblock, not a guardrail.
That makes so much sense.
Huh.
So a clear structure defines the what and the why, but leaves the how to the autonomy of the team.
Yes. It removes the need for those 10 alignment meetings because the decision rights are already clear. You don't need to ask for permission. You just need to execute within the guardrails.
But here is the darker side of that addiction to complexity that we talked about. The text explicitly says this dynamic strips people of energy.
Strips people of energy. That feels almost violent.
It is corrosive. We have to stop thinking of bureaucracy as a neutral force. When you take a talented, driven person and put them in a system where they have to fight for permission to do their job.
Oh, where they have to sit in 3 hours of meetings just to decide on a font color.
Exactly. That isn't just inefficient. It is an extraction of vitality. The system literally corrodes the human spirit.
I think that explains the modern burnout crisis better than just the word workload does. I mean, I have had days where I worked 12 hours on a project I love and I felt completely energized at the end.
We all have.
And I have had days where I worked 4 hours fighting with IT or compliance and felt like I wanted to sleep for a week.
It is the ratio of effort to impact. If I work hard and see a result, I get energy back. It is a reciprocal loop.
But if I work hard fighting a process and see zero result...
Your battery drains. It is a massive energy leak.
Okay, so let's pause there and synthesize. We have established the external problem. Complexity creates hesitation, it creates an addiction to meetings, and it strips our energy.
And the solution is clarity, simplifying the structure to fuel momentum.
Right. So let's imagine a utopia for a second. We have slashed the unnecessary meetings. We have simplified the reporting lines.
We have turned all the roadblocks into guardrails.
Yes. The road is paved. The sun is shining. We should be flying down the highway, right?
You would think so. Logic dictates that if you remove the friction, the object moves.
But this is where the second source comes in. Coherence and the kinetic power of alignment. And it essentially ruins the party.
Because the car still won't move if the engine is busted.
Or, more accurately, if the driver creates their own internal friction. This brings us to the internal state.
The source argues that you can have perfect external clarity, but if your internal operating system is running on a mode called performing, you will still stall out.
Now, we really need to unpack this word, performing, because in almost every other context in the business world, being a high performer is the ultimate goal.
Right. I want a high-performance car, a high-performance team.
But this source uses the word performing as a negative. What gives?
It is a crucial distinction, and it's largely linguistic. In this specific text, performing doesn't mean doing a good job or achieving great results.
It refers to acting.
Yes. It means putting on a show. The text defines performing as a misalignment between your internal identity and your external expectations.
So it is essentially impression management.
Exactly. It is driven by fear or defensiveness. The source describes it as an obsession with being impressive instead of being in motion.
Obsession with being impressive instead of being in motion, that hits really hard.
Think about what that looks like in a meeting.
Yeah.
We have all seen it. Someone asks a question not because they actually need the answer to move the project forward.
But because they want to signal to the VP in the room that they are strategic?
Yes, they use buzzwords. They complicate the issue just to make themselves look like the only one smart enough to solve it.
I have definitely been that person in the past, saying things like, let's take a step back and look at the strategic unlock here.
Right.
I was just using words to signal that I belonged in the room.
That is performing. You are prioritizing the image of competence over the actual work. The underlying goal of performing is proving your worth.
And the source argues that this mindset is driven almost entirely by insecurity.
You are constantly scanning, asking, do I belong here? Do they think I am smart? Am I safe?
And proving your worth feels so heavy, like physically heavy.
That is the key metric here, energy. Think about the mental RAM required to perform. You are doing the work, you're writing the code or drafting the brief, but you are also running a secondary high-intensity program in your head.
A program that is constantly scanning the room. Did they like that? Was I assertive enough just then? Do I look like leadership material?
You are running a simulation of yourself alongside the actual self.
And that splits your energy. It creates incoherence.
Imagine a standard light bulb. The light goes out in every direction. It is scattered.
It lights up the room, sure, but the energy dissipates very quickly.
That is the energy of performing. It is scattered by the constant need to manage perceptions in 360 degrees.
Okay, so that is the trap. What is the alternative? The source contrasts performing with aligning, and I assume this is where the coherence part of the title comes in.
Right. Aligning is defined as bridging the inner and outer worlds to create that state of coherence. When you are aligning, execution becomes an identity choice.
Identity choice? That sounds a bit abstract. Can we make that more concrete for the listener?
Let's try. Think about a master carpenter, or maybe a heart surgeon. When a surgeon is in the middle of a highly complex procedure, are they thinking, I hope the nurses think I look really professional right now?
No, absolutely not. They are completely locked in. They are just focused on the outcome.
They are expressing their potential. That is the fundamental shift. Performing is about proving worth. Aligning is about expressing potential.
When you are aligned, you aren't doing the work because you were afraid of getting fired or looking bad.
You're doing it because it is a natural expression of who you are and what you are exceptionally good at.
It is intrinsic motivation versus extrinsic validation.
Yes, but it is actually more physical than just motivation. And this is where the physics analogy comes back in full force.
If performing is a scattered light bulb, alignment is a laser.
Exactly. A laser is just light, but the waves are coherent. They are moving in the exact same direction, phase-locked together.
That is why a laser can cut through solid steel, while a light bulb just gets hot to the touch.
That is such a powerful image. So coherence isn't just a corporate buzzword. It is about vector alignment. All your energy is going in one unified direction.
The source says that while performing drains your energy, alignment actively generates energy. It provides ignition.
Ignition, like starting an engine.
It is self-sustaining. When your internal values who you are match your external actions, what you do friction completely disappears.
You aren't second-guessing every email. You enter a true state of flow.
That is what the title means by kinetic power.
The energy of motion. So you aren't forcing the car to move anymore. The movement is just a natural consequence of the alignment.
Yes, but here is the really tricky part, and this is where we have to synthesize these two sources together.
Because we rarely work alone in a vacuum. We work in complex teams and massive organizations.
Right, so I am wondering how these two concepts, The external complexity we talked about earlier and this internal performing, how do they actually interact?
That is the million-dollar question, because I can be fully aligned, totally ready to go, and then walk into a bureaucratic nightmare of an office.
They feed each other. This is the synthesis that makes these sources so incredibly powerful together. The text offers a very stern warning.
It says, if people are performing instead of aligning, the system will corrode.
Even if the external system is simple.
Even if the system is perfect.
Yeah.
Because performing acts like an imposed complex process all on its own.
Wait, let's pause and look at that. How is a mindset a process?
Think about it. If I am in performing mode, I am terrified of making a mistake. So what do I do to protect myself?
You probably hide information.
I probably create 20 extra slides just to justify my decisions to the board.
You probably call extra meetings to get consensus so you aren't solely to blame if things go south.
Oh, wow. So you become the bureaucracy.
You generate internal bureaucracy. You are filling out mental forms and waiting for mental approvals before you take a single step.
So even if your boss says, hey, just go do it, you have total freedom. You can't.
Because you are stuck in the complexity of your own insecurity.
That is a massive light bulb moment for me. We constantly blame the company for being bureaucratic and slow.
But how much red tape are we creating ourselves simply because we are trying to prove our worth?
It is really uncomfortable to admit, but a lot. We build cages for ourselves because the cage feels safer than standing in the open field.
And conversely, think about what happens when you take a team that is aligned. A team ready to express their potential, laser-focused.
And you drop them into a complex, bureaucratic organization that is completely addicted to meetings.
They suffocate. You strip their energy. You take that ignition, that laser beam we talked about, and you scatter it through a massive prism of forms and committee meetings.
You take high kinetic potential and you just grind it down to a halt.
So to get this kinetic power, this true unstoppable momentum, you need the double unlock.
You need the external simplification, clearing the structural barriers so people literally can move.
And you need the internal alignment, creating a space where people feel safe enough to drop the mask and actually move.
Is trusting the road and trusting the driver.
That's it. That is the definition of a high-velocity culture. It is not about working longer hours. It's not about hustling harder or waking up earlier.
It's about removing the drag, both the drag of the external system and the drag of the internal ego.
This deeply changes how I look at my calendar for next week. It isn't just a time management issue anymore. It is an energy management issue.
It brings us right back to autonomy. That is the ultimate message here. We aren't just cogs in a machine.
We have the ability and the responsibility, really, to look at our environment and ask, is this complexity actually necessary? Can I simplify the structure?
And to look at ourselves in the mirror and ask, am I working to build something, or am I working to prove I am a builder?
Am I working to build something, or am I working to prove I am a builder? That is the exact difference between motion and acting.
It is. And as you go back to your work days this week, I want you to treat this as an experiment in observation.
Don't try to change everything overnight. That never works. Just observe.
When you feel that immense fatigue, that wading through mud sensation we started the show with, stop.
Take a breath and ask yourself, is the mud coming from the system? Or is the mud coming from me?
It's usually a bit of both, isn't it?
Usually, yes, but you can only fix the part that you can clearly see. And recognizing when you slip into performing mode is the very first step to stopping it.
I think that is the perfect place to land this conversation. But before we let everyone go, we always like to leave you with something to chew on.
Something to take with you into the week?
We've talked a lot about energy, we've talked about friction, and we've talked about the masks we wear in the office. What is the final thought we want to leave them with?
I want to go back to that idea of sheer exhaustion. We have come to accept exhaustion as the required price of admission for modern work. We think, I am tired, therefore I must have worked really hard.
But I want you to ask yourself a hard question, a sort of personal calculation.
If performing is about proving your worth to others, and aligning is about expressing your true potential, calculate the tax.
Calculate the tax.
How much of your daily exhaustion is coming from the actual difficulty of the tasks? The real solving of complex problems.
And how much of it is coming from the sheer caloric burn of maintaining the mask of performance?
Calculating the tax on the mask, that is definitely going to stay with me. It is a bit terrifying, honestly, but deeply necessary.
Thank you for guiding us through this today. It's been incredibly eye-opening.
It's been my absolute pleasure.
And thank you for listening. Keep observing, keep aligning, and we will see you on the next deep dive.